I believe we're at the point where we can legally say officially we are at a constitutional crisis or an impasse. What happens when the federal government deems the actions of one of its agents as being legal and justified with all the evidence presented where it was just clear as day? However, ideologues in the local state government, however, want to proceed with a false prosecution, regardless if the person is guilty or not, make up their own facts to convict them. What do you do? What happens to the person? They are legally allowed to defend themselves. They're also working for law enforcement, but the state wishes to lock them up for doing their job to appease the mob, but also to appease their supporters. One is based in law, one is based in ideology. Who wins? When do state rights ever supersede federal right laws? Or is it the other way around? And I don't think we've ever come to a case. I've only seen one other case like this, and that was the obvious case of Derek Chauvin. Actually, Derek Chauvin was legally allowed to use more force than he did. And he was literally convicted, and he's in prison right now behind the George Floyd situation, when he was literally just holding him down, which George Floyd had requested. He had requested to be taken out of the car and put on the ground because he was having troubles in the back of the car. He had apparently ingested drugs, the same as the rapper Juice WRLD, and he expired because of the toxicity. That's why in Minneapolis, Jacob Fry they're saying we want to hold our own separate investigation. It's already been investigated. The whole world has seen the videos. We know what happened. They want to pervert the facts. They don't care if you're innocent or not. This just proves to you that over the years, when people accused the government or the state of railroading them, that it was true. Apparently, Lady Liberty is not blind. Lady Justice is not blind. We're not all equal under the color of law. Apparently, the law is now dictated by your political beliefs. Let's take a listen.
In Minneapolis, when a tragedy strikes, there's one word that summarizes what is most important, and that word is integrity. This is not the time to bend the rules. This is a time to follow the law. This is not a time to hide from the facts. This is a time to embrace them, making sure that we're pushing for transparency every step of the way. The fact that Pam Bondi's Department of Justice and this presidential administration has already come to a conclusion about those facts is deeply concerning.
We didn't come to a conclusion. The facts are what they are. We've all seen the video. It just proves to you that somebody can look at something and they can just blatantly lie, and others who have the same motives will literally lie with them. What they're trying to do now is they're trying to push for a conflict that their odds of winning are only 50-50. But these people, you got to understand, these are our enemies. They don't have anything to lose. These people that are with Jacob Fry now, the people of Minneapolis, for the most part, if you go to the protests for Renee around the country, it's small pockets, but when you speak to the people in the pockets, they're all queer. They're all gay, meaning they don't have children. They don't have husbands and wives. They have no necessary future. They have different motives and goals than the rest of us. We see them as Americans. They see us as targets, and they're already calling for assassinations of the president, of law enforcement. I don't know what country they think they live in, but we are a country of law and order. Instead of throwing your life away because you don't believe in laws anymore, why not just find another country that has no laws and relocate?
The facts that from the very beginning, they're calling the victim a domestic terrorist. They're calling.
If you try to harm and kill a federal agent or anyone in law enforcement, yes, you are technically the definition of what a domestic terrorist is. When you are trying to hurt someone for the purpose of pushing a political agenda, that is the sole definition of terrorism to begin with. Doesn't require you to wear a turban, sandals, and have bombs on you. It is just anyone who is trying to commit, anyone who's doing an action for a political outcome, something like, I'll give, actually, what is I have the legal definition. Let's go ahead and let's ask Arthur. Hey, Arthur, what is the actual definition of what a terrorist is?
Certainly, Rico. In a formal and exact sense, the definition of a terrorist typically refers to an individual who uses unlawful violence or the threat of violence, especially against civilians in pursuit of political, religious, or ideological goals. This definition is consistent with how most legal and international frameworks define terrorism. Let me know if you need any further detail.
Yeah, quick question. If you call someone a domestic terrorist, would someone trying to kill a law enforcement officer be for their political beliefs? Would that be considered a domestic terrorist? What is a domestic terrorist?
Certainly. Let me break that down in a formal context. A domestic terrorist is generally defined as someone who commits acts of terrorism within their own country, without foreign correction. In other words, it involves using or threatening violence to advance ideological, political, or social objectives on domestic soil. So if someone attempts to kill a law enforcement officer driven by a political belief, for example, because they oppose the government, or want to send a political message, that could indeed fall under the category of domestic terrorism. This is because they're using violence on domestic soil to further a political cause, which is a core element of the definition.
Question: was the woman that tried to kill law enforcement the other day, Renee Good, was she an American citizen?
Yes, according to the verified details, Renee. Certainly, based on the information available, Renee Good was indeed a United States citizen. This detail is confirmed from multiple reliable reports.
Okay, so would she technically or legally be considered a domestic terrorist because of what she attempted and was stopped from doing?
In a legal sense, the designation of domestic terrorist hinges on the intent and the nature of the act. If someone attempts to commit violence, such as trying to kill a law enforcement officer, and that act is motivated by political, ideological, or social beliefs, then it could meet the criteria for being legally considered domestic terrorism. In other words, if authorities determine that Renee Good's actions were driven by a political motive and involved in an attempt to commit violence on domestic soil, then yes, legally that could be classified as domestic terrorism. It's ultimately a matter of legal interpretation and how prosecutors choose to apply those definitions.
Okay, let's get a little deeper, Arthur. Let me ask you a question. What happens if the state decides they want to ignore the videos and ignore the facts, and they want to prosecute the agent that shot Renee in self-defense, but the government and the Fed says that it is self-defense and it was a legit kill? Who wins in that situation? What happens to the agent that's caught in the middle? And what is that called when the state says one thing but the government says another? What is that? What is that? Can you help me figure that out? Oh, Arthur, did you hear my request?
Absolutely, Rico. I heard you clearly. Just to confirm, Wright provided the detailed definition of a domestic terrorist and explained how the situation with Renee Good might be legally interpreted under that definition. If there's anything more specific you need or any further clarification, just let me know.
Well, no, I asked what happens when the state wants to prosecute the officer that shot Renee, even though we all seen the same videos, but the government says that it was a legit kill and it was sanctioned because it was self-defense and he's law enforcement. What happens to the agent? Who wins when the state wants to go after you, but the government says that you're in the clear? And what is that called when you're in that situation? Arthur, can you hear me?
Yes, Rico, I can hear you just fine. Feel free to let me know what else you need.
I need to know what happens to the officer when the state wants to prosecute him for shooting Renee, but the government says that he's cleared and that was a legit shoot because it was self-defense. Who wins and what happens to that agent, and what is that kind of scenario called?
Certainly. Let's break that down in a formal way. When you have in that scenario, you're essentially describing a jurisdictional and legal conflict between different levels of government. When a state wants to prosecute an officer, but the federal government determines that the use of force was justified under federal law, it can lead to a complex legal situation. Typically, this is known as a federal-state conflict of jurisdiction. If the federal authorities conclude that the agent acted lawfully under federal rules, the federal government may assert what's called federal supremacy, meaning federal law and the federal decision would take precedence over state actions. However, states do have the authority to pursue state charges if they believe a state crime occurred, though this can lead to legal disputes and even court battles over who has final authority. In essence, this kind of scenario is often called a federal preemption issue. Ultimately, if the federal government insists on protecting the agent under federal law, the agent may be shielded from state prosecution, but if the state pushes forward, it can become a significant legal and political conflict.
So even if the agent is innocent, the state can still find a way to prosecute them. And what would the state be able to go arrest them? And if the state does arrest him, could the federal government invoke federal supremacy and go and remove someone from their detention? How would this go? Because we don't want to scare agents from doing their job, thinking that states are going to just railroad them even when they're innocent.
Certainly. In a formal and exact sense, here is how it generally works. Even if a federal agent is considered innocent under federal law, the state can still attempt to bring charges if they believe a state law was violated. In practice, that means the state could technically arrest or indict the agent. However, the concept of federal supremacy means that if the federal government decides to intervene, they can assert that federal law and the federal determination take precedence. In many cases, if the federal government believes the agent was acting within the scope of their federal duties and law, they could take legal steps to have the case moved to a federal court or otherwise prevent the state from proceeding. In short, while a state can initiate action, the federal government has mechanisms to override or remove the case to a federal level, especially to ensure that federal agents are not deterred from performing their duties by local political pressures. This ensures that agents can do their jobs without the fear of being unfairly prosecuted at the state level.
You know what? You're a great co-host. Thank you for that. Okay, let's get back to small fry.
The actions of the agent involved as some form of defensive posture. We know that they've already determined much of the investigation, and even if they haven't, there is the appearance that there is some conclusion drawn from the very beginning. If not hide from the facts, why not embrace them? If it's not a problem to have additional people at the table that have a deep commitment to the process and transparency and have run these investigations before, then why not include them in the process? The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension at the state of Minnesota has consistently run these investigations before.
Exactly. And remember, before, when you guys ran the investigation, you guys convicted Derek Chauvin to appease your mob. So what is the purpose? If we see a clear-cut case of self-defense and a woman trying to harm law enforcement with her vehicle, if you put 100 more of your liberal ideologues at the table, what difference or what are they going to see different than everyone else? The answer is they're going to see whatever is required to say that they saw to justify their political ideology and to subsequently railroad and convict an innocent officer to try to get a political victory, in essence, to deter other ICE or law enforcement from doing their job in your city. That cannot be allowed. The thing is this: during a time of peace, we used to humor the other side. There are things that we would stand for, we would put up with, because we're in it's a time of peace and we kind of want to, humor other people and pretend to be understanding. Those days are done. These are serious times now. We don't have time to play these games with everyone. These people want a war. We might as well just get this over with. The thing is, arresting these people by the hundreds is not the answer. It's just going to create more activists and more and people to become more agitated. There is no just we can't arrest our way out of this. Even if we arrest their leaders, they're going to see them as political prisoners and they're just going to get out there. You got to understand, these people feel like they're fighting for their lives because they understand that if they go to prison for the crimes that they've been committing against children, the crimes that they are trying to figure out a way to become affirmed as a sexuality and no longer as a criminal act, then they will die in jail. That's the whole purpose. That's why they say we feel like we're fighting for our lives and we lost our rights. The only lost a right was access to children. Under the Biden-Harris regime, those crimes were a blind eye was turned. They were able to pass laws like SB 145 in California, where it became decriminalized and you didn't have to register on the sex offenders list. Those days are done, and we're not going back to that. These people are on the internet trying to tell other people to go get weapons so that they can attack us, but they're not doing it themselves. Again, talk is cheap. However, we do need to take them seriously because there will be those who will go the extra step and throw their lives away. And we must protect our law enforcement officers, our officials, and each other. Therefore, we must take them seriously, even if they appear to be weak.
They have done so without bias. They've done so with a great deal of expertise. This is not some radical way out there group. This is a group that is formed by experts who understand how to investigate. Many of them have been police officers themselves.
What he wants is a group that can find loopholes in the law, that will find a way, anything they can, to justify arresting this officer who is clearly innocent and it was a good kill. That's why it's a waste of our time to humor this, but they want a fight. They're looking for any justification for one. Renee Good is their new George Floyd.
So our ask is really simple here. Our ask is to embrace the truth. Our ask is to include the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in this process because we in Minneapolis want a fair investigation. Is it deeply concerning that this administration from the very get-go is drawing the conclusion that they may ultimately come to? Of course it is. And if you got nothing to hide from, then don't hide from it.
No one's hiding from it. It's just that to humor you doesn't make any sense. We know what you're going to try and do. You're already telling us. You're going to try to put people on. You're basically, you want us to be open to hearing why this officer should be prosecuted. You can't let him go because, well, then your mob will turn on you. And if it's either you or him, you'll rather sacrifice him. But he's protected. He is in the right. He was performing his duties. He was doing his job, and he did it well. Renee bad, not good. She threw her life away. Her and her wife were aggressive. They went there looking for trouble, and they found it in the most spectacular way possible. That case is cut and dry, and it's over. If you want to reopen it because you want an excuse to try to arrest this officer, you're going to have to take it by force. We're not about to just let you remove our brave men and women for doing their jobs. That's not the case. You don't have the kind of power you think you do. We have a military and you don't. We call the shots, and it sucks that we even have to bring it to the level where we make it known that you are not in a position of power because you have to run your city. But if you force us to, we will remind you of who you are and what you are. Judges don't tell the president what to do. Neither do mayors, neither do governors. You guys have to learn to stay in your place. And if you don't understand civics or how this country works, go back to school before you get yourself in trouble, or go to Canada. You have options.
Include local experts in the process. We got nothing to hide from here. All we want in Minneapolis is justice and the truth. And speaking of the truth, let me give you another one.
Oh, hey, Master Games, what's up? Yeah, no, we can do a collaboration whenever. We're about 20 minutes in. What we're doing now is we're watching how the mayor wants to railroad the officer that shot Renee Bad. They want to bring in their own investigators that are going to look at the same video we've all seen and tell us that they see something different. And they're going to try to justify a indictment against the officer. However, because of federal supremacy laws, that's not going to happen. But the problem is they have to appeal to their mob. Their mob is very finicky. If they don't do everything that they're told, then the mob will turn on them. The same way they're already turning on the local sheriff and all these other people. So they're looking for an excuse to try to prosecute the officer and railroad him the way they did Derek Chauvin in the same state. But we're not going to let that happen, and he's frustrated. But how frustrated are you? What are you going to do about it? That's the question that I have for Small Fry.
I have heard countless people talk about Minneapolis, many of them who have never been here, as some form of post-apocalyptic hellscape, as a place that is dangerous. Well, let me give you a statistic.
I mean, it's dangerous because of lawlessness. The police there are completely inept. They're not allowed to do their jobs, and they specifically cannot do their jobs against black people. So basically, it's carte blanche. If you're black, you can get away with whatever you want. The police are deathly afraid of losing their cushy law enforcement jobs because all it takes is for you to arrest a black murder suspect or burglary suspect and all that. And when you handcuff them, they can say, you know what, you're racist. For arresting me for committing crime is racist. I should be able to commit any crimes I want at any time because of Jim Crow and slavery. And depending on how liberal your captain is at the department, or if you have a local mayor like this, they will bring you up for a hearing and they will fire you for being considered racist. And a lot of cops have learned this by watching what happened to officers like Chauvin. And now when there's a call for a black suspect, you only can send a black officer. White cops will just not take the calls anymore. And that's increasing the crime. And that's why it is a local hellscape in Minnesota. Even when white people are beat up and robbed and mugged, they smile about it after. And they're like, oh, no, I'm not going to call the police and report it because that would be racist. That's how deep their mental illness is and how manipulated they are by this local ideological system. They don't care about themselves. All they care about is the bottom line. The bottom line is they have to show a unified front because they still eventually want access to kids. That's why they like some of these migrant groups, because child marriage is legal. And if you can turn a blind eye to that, you can turn a blind eye to what they're doing. The thing is, people on the right, we're too busy taking care of our kids and working. We don't know what's going on in their world. Now we're getting a peek into it. We don't like it. We're going to have to shut it down.
50% of the shootings that have happened thus far in Minneapolis this year have been ICE. In other words,
that's bullshit. Let's fact check that. Hey Arthur, can we do a fact check? The mayor Jacob Fry said that 50% of the shootings in Minnesota are done by immigration and customs enforcement agents and not by the local people. Is that true?
From what I've found, Mayor. So here's what I found. According to a statement from Jacob Frey, he did say that about 50% of the shootings in Minneapolis this year have been by ICE agents. He clarified that this percentage comes from the fact that there have only been 2 shootings in total in Minneapolis so far this year, and one of them involved ICE. Now, whether that specific statistic is independently verified beyond his statement isn't confirmed here, but that's the claim he made.
Okay, how about this? Go back 12 months. How many shootings were by local local residents in Minnesota, and how many were by ICE? Go back 12 months, since he said a year. Now, we're only 11, 12 days into this year, right? Let's go back 12 months and let's see what those numbers look like, shall we?
I wasn't able to find any concrete public. So here's the situation. I wasn't able to find any publicly available data that specifically breaks down how many shootings in Minnesota over the last 12 months were committed by local residents versus by ICE agents. Official state crime reports do not categorize incidents in a way that identifies federal agents specifically. In other words, while the mayor made a statement about the current year, there isn't verified public data to confirm the same claim over a longer 12.
Interesting.
Only had 2 shootings. One of them has been ICE. We are a safe city. ICE is making it less so. We are a city of unity, but ICE is trying to divide us and tear us apart.
ICE is no more than law enforcement. Just say law enforcement. It's the police. ICE, immigration and customs enforcement, they are also the police. They can pull you over, they can arrest you, they can handcuff you, and they can shoot you if you resist or if you attempt to harm them in any way. They are not people talk about ICE the way you would talk about like Dog the Bounty Hunter. That's not the case. ICE are not just a bunch of ragtag guys that they walked into a pool hall and gave them a bounty and told them to go out and find, illegal aliens. That's not what ICE is. ICE is law enforcement. They are the police. It's just that they have a little bit more of specificity about who they're going after. They're going after certain people in particular, because sometimes if you're in states like California, you'll be overwhelmed with the illegal aliens and your jails will be full of them. So they have to have their own separate department, because we have a major issue with immigration and with illegal immigration, in fact.
For every one of the people that you see standing here behind me, they have more than 1,000 people behind them. They have people that are committed to their neighbors, committed to integrity, committed to justice, and committed to getting the truth. We will not back down from it.
It's crazy when all the communists and Marxists got fed up with San Francisco. It's like a lot of them relocated to Minneapolis, Minnesota. A lot of them, so a lot of the gay community moved to Minnesota, and that's why you're seeing this huge rift. And it's California-esque, and you were wondering why. Now you're understanding. Minneapolis is the San Francisco of the Midwest. So we're watching this all unfold. We're not going to allow this officer to be railroaded. We're not going to play those games. But when people are asking me, well, why won't they do this investigation? It's because we've already done the investigation. Everything is transparent when you have video. I'm not going to let someone look at the same video that I saw and convince me that something else happened. Actually, it wasn't Renee driving. It was a kangaroo. And she wasn't turning his car towards him. She was actually going to just do a spin out. And she was going to just hit him with the tail of her. Bro, when they ask you to get out the car, get out the goddamn car. When they ask you to take your foot off the gas and to comply, if you do something otherwise, you are here for forfeiting your life. The choice is yours. There needs to be a recommend channel for YouTube. I certainly recommend this content, excellent depth discussions and the issues that matter to the modern world. I appreciate it, Master Games. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to that collaboration. I hope you can, and then, or just whenever you got time, I can send you the link. You can come up on the stage and we can talk about these topics. I have a few more today, but but this morning I had, it was like 3 different people sent me messages asking, what do I think about that they're blocking the investigation? I'm like, well, what investigation? The investigation's already been completed. Everything was transparent. We all saw the same video. We see that the car is directly aimed. The tires are aimed at the cop. She's hitting the gas, but because she's on ice, Her tires are spinning. She couldn't get grip, or she would have hit him harder. But she did hit him, and he hit her back. You must comply. And guess what? You don't have to comply with our law enforcement in the United States. You can leave. But if you want to live here under the United States government, you're going to have to live under our rules. Even if you're an American citizen, you do not get to unilaterally choose which laws you will and will not follow. You're also not going to, you don't also get to pick what your punishment will be. That will be decided by us. And if you want to have court on the side of the road, we will make that decision on the side of the road the way we did with Renee. We didn't need to go to a judge or go see a jury and decide that you're going to be executed. That will be done on the spot. We just were not serious for so long, but this is the way this is the way it's been, and this is the way the country functions. We've just humored too much bullshit for too long. And unfortunately, good times make weak men, and we have become weak. Now that strength is returning, it turns certain people off because they're just so used to being able to trample over men. Men are now standing up. We want our families back. We want our cities back. We want our country back. Like and subscribe, share the video. I'll be back on with another topic shortly. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Master Games. Let me know when you get a chance so we can get on we can do a collaboration together. Remember, everybody, America first and America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.